What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here, and welcome to another new episode for Classic Albums Revisited, which is a segment that I review albums that are, in my opinion, one of my favourites of all time. I know it has been a long while since I have last reviewed any album in this segment, but with that being said, I am very happy to review an album that has celebrated its 30th anniversary the previous month. And I'm going to be reviewing the legendary seminal album from Slowdive, entitled Souvlaki. Souvlaki is the second studio album by Slowdive. It was out on the 1st of June 1993 through the independent record label of Creation Records. This is the follow-up album to their debut, Just for a Day, that was released back in 1991. Unfortunately, the album did get scathing bad reviews from both the critics and the public eye. Despite that, the band continued to make more material. However, the relationship between Neil Halstead and Rachel Goswell had ended. The band had made 40 songs and they were sent to the head of Creation Records, Alan McGee. Alan did reject every single piece, and the band at the time were inspired by the Berlin trilogy of Bowie's and the Sounds of Joy Division. Alan McGee decided to let the band try again and have their beginnings of creative freedom. During the making and writing for this record, Neil and the band's manager decide to leave the recording studio and rent a cottage in Wales, and Neil wrote most of the material that would be eventually included for this album. Another influence, Brian Eno, and as well as the genres of ambient and dub. The band wanted Eno to produce the record, but he rejected it. However, he did decide to collaborate with the band and work on 2 songs for the album. The songs are Sing and Here She Comes. It had been a very difficult process, emotionally and privately, but nevertheless, the band did create the whole album in the end. When it was released, just like Just for a Day, it did get a lot of very negative attention. They were not satisfied with the sound of shoegaze, as they were more interested into the rock and the Britpop movements. The album released 1 single, which dropped a year later in February '94, the single of Allison. The album later on had been praised and was regarded as one of the greatest albums of all time in the shoegaze genre. Souvlaki, being the second studio album, is, to my mind, when it comes to the progression and following up debut albums' directions go, Souvlaki is one of the best examples. They are one of my favourite bands as well, because not only that they have been involved and as engaged in the shoegaze genre, like with Swerve Driver, To My Bloody Valentine, Ride, etc., those household names to name a few, Slowdive is a band without any exaggeration whatsoever, that this is a band which contrasts melancholic to personal, deep, and thought-provoking contexts in simplicity, but blended in some beautiful and surreal emotions into art. This is an album which also just has been aged as phenomenally well as ever, just like with the album of Loveless from My Bloody Valentine and Rides Nowhere and Going Blank Again. This record alone is, to me, the beautiful combination into melancholic and bittersweet emotional transitions from the lyrics and from the heartfelt exploration of making the music, but combine it in some of the richest, purest, and really textured production. Shoegaze is a genre that is obviously not for everybody, because understandably, and we already know that the people hated the state of the genre around that time because of rising ones in the rock and grunge and Britpop movements from the UK and the US. Obviously with the Britpop movement on Blur, Suede, Oasis, Pulp, the grunge to the rock, and many, many others, just to name a few. Slowdive is without question a band that truly deserved so much into their originality and to make a distinctive, separate nature of themselves as musicians without even thinking about copying other bands in the shoegaze movement. Souvlaki is, to me, one of these records that does sound as really low mood and down in terms of the sound and the lyrics, but when I listen to this record, it at the same time really gravitates my listening experiences as a positive matter. I don't feel like condoning myself to be in a low, sad state, because this album is to me a joyful and exhilarating approach, and that's what a lot of albums should really be doing when you listen to different types of music. Even metal, for example, besides the very grim, dark, grotesque and heavy subject matters of a lot of metal proportions of music and albums and bands, they have a connection in a positive matter, and I think that's what shoegaze absolutely does. Pretty much the same thing at the same time. The album opens with Alison. It's beautiful and irresistible in its comforting and very warm mix within the simplicity, and the vocals from Neil were cozy, and as well as Rachel's harmony on the chorus sounded angelic. It's a sublime, positive sound to open the album into the climbing path of its instrumentation that is full of meditation. It's surreal and gorgeous. The lyrics are like this drug-related experience theme, and the whole lyrics point of view is like in the view of escapism, psychedelic, dreamy visions at the same time. But besides very big praised shoegaze hits, Alison is always one of the best ones. Love this opening track. Machine Gun opens in a shiny glow of itself. Very touching, soft vocal melodies from Rachel. It follows the mood and the mixture of soundscape and the crafting music. The lyrics, to me, are kind of like a following to what Alison was in what they were all about, in a similar vein. But the words on this track on descending in water, but not like the drugs from Alison. The Son of Sheba reference is added to make a different personality of itself and mentions water instead of the drugs. Machine Gun is always as really mellow, but it makes a haunting yet melancholic nature into the way Rachel sings and the pristine quality of the ambience. 40 Days, this is one of the songs when the band have amplified things up a bit more. Neil wrote this one as a part of the aftermath of their breakup, and the innocence was shown, and throughout the sound of the track, this was all attached in a lot of energy, staying in the attachment of the past and not into the new things, and Neil basically wants to think about the relationship, feeling very lost and sad at the same time on the inside rather than expressing it on the outside of his own personality. The band were great and tight on this song to keep the melody, and the atmosphere was really strong. The band decided to continue the exploration in experimenting through studio and music techniques. Sing and Here She Comes with Brian Eno's involvement. Sing is where the electronic influences were really high, as Neil was into the ambient and dub genres. Eno was involved into making his own magical proportions. The loose drums to Rachel's vocals were positioned very comfortably, while the electronic noises carry on. The vocal register to the softness of them were as awesome to listen to, and you can hear the engaged involvement of the guitars and more reverbs that were positioned at the same time into the delicacy of the song. Here She Comes, this is another exploration into the loneliness depths of emotions. They are portrayed in these lyrics as if Neil was feeling like to pretend that everything is fine when it obviously isn't. More trippings into a bit of the drugs later as well, like with Alison. The guitar's involvement with its extreme usage of the tremolo effect and matching the bass together sounds really nice. They were involved to make this piece of music as eerie as possible and yet as swimmingly lush. Souvlaki Space Station. Just like with Alison, this is one of the best examples of the sound of the genre and the band's repertoire. This is a highlight of the record. I adore this whole heavy wandering of noise from the distorting guitars and the repetition of the basic chords in the structure. It was massive, but it does not lose any contact whatsoever. The band were following each other through these psychedelic rawness sounds, swirling guitars, giant reverbs. It doesn't make you lose anything because this is a song full of intriguing amazement. The lyrics were written by Rachel as if this is like her response to what Neil was saying before and obviously later after, from his own private time of making lyrics based around the relationship. And its growth on these themes were continuing, these themes of loss, losing and sinking throughout this whole arrangement. And Souvlaki Space Station is without any shadow of a doubt another classic. The biggest hit from Slowdive is When the Sun Hits. The music to this song is very different and a dynamic contrast because the beat to this was really poppy and bouncy. It's got a mesmerizing hook and it's addictive that matches the heart and the soul of the vocals and the musicianship. The rest of the band have been cleverly positioned into crafting their own separate pieces and make a beautiful blend and connection. This one is another gem. Neil's expressions this time of being in fear that his love is burning too quickly and fizzling out despite his heavy love for Rachel at the time. Some mind game lyrics in a way that it means that he doesn't want to lose her and he cares about her a lot. I love the ongoing nature throughout this looping continuation of the song's structure. Altogether, the band decides to take things down to slow the tempos from the energy on the last track and effectively increases more of the mellowness. The words continue this deep emotional contact from Neil's view of being apart, but he feels like he's going to forgive the past lover for leaving as they were close together, obviously. But it feels like a dream and felt like it was something real, although she left him without noticing Neil's actual emotions and heartbreak. Ton of beauty in this whole giant, flowing and wonderful mixture. Melon yellow, this is where more of the darkness decides to take things apart. The drums continue the rhythm. Simple and excellent guitar notes paint this darker image, and when you hear the chorus, you hear the increasing noise of these mysterious, distorted chords everywhere. The description, lyrics-wise, was feeling like something deeper to be attracted to Rachel and feels or behaves the same way as her. The album finishes with the most scathingly raw song, Dagger. It is as intense as soon as you hear the structure and the strumming acoustic guitars. The words are Neil's low point into breaking down to nothingness. As twisted as it sounds, this conclusion of the track brings the moodiest sound. Being alone is the worst silence, describing himself as the thorn. It is really deep for Rachel, and understandably, she does not like the song at the period of listening to this track. Missing her voice and hiding himself away from the public eye around the time when the song was written. Obviously, as I've mentioned in the making of process, that he did write a lot of the songs while the band were doing their own separate points and adding sounds in the studio to make this record. The production is outstanding, full of clear tones. The reverb, for some people, can understandably be maybe overproduced, but this sound of the reverb makes this album as haunting and distinctive, and yet alone full of the melodrama. The band, besides the difficulties that they went through throughout this album's creativity, have made a gem of a record. The mixing was stunning, also top-notch, and this is also one of my most favourite produced records in the shoegaze genre as well. Souvlaki is a separate form of itself, and yet alone, it still amazes me that this album, at that point, didn't get a lot of the positive attention that it truly had been deserving later on. It was really a shame that people were so overlooking this band and record at that time. I guess it came out at the most difficult time, but the band just didn't give a shit. They really wanted to make this record, and much love and praise to the band for that. I'm super glad and grateful actually that we are going to be hearing new Slowdive with a brand new studio album later on this year. The band have made themselves as a complete package of wonderful sounds of themselves, being a band making music to ascend the history of the shoegaze genre as a whole, and this is also one of my favourite albums of the 1990s as well. That's personally all I would like to say about Souvlaki by Slowdive. Let me know what you guys think of this album in the comments down below. Do you love this record? Is this a classic to you? Is this one of your favourite albums of all time? Please address your views on this album, because it has been as rewarding and as a pleasurable experience to revisit this record. This is just as one of the most important and influential records of all time, that how can you not miss out on this particular record with its impact and growth? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.